Welcome to the Public Works Nerds Podcast.
Welcome to the Public Works Nerds Podcast, a public works podcast of the nerds, by the nerds, and for the nerds. I'm your host, Mark Culver. Today, we're going to talk about communication, specifically effective communication in our profession. As public works professionals, we are constantly communicating to our staff, to our higher-ups, to our council or county boards, and perhaps most importantly, to the public. So let's talk about that. What works, what doesn't work for communicating to and with the public, how we can use communications maybe to even advocate for project funding and such. And just kind of learn about what's being done out there. And today we welcome Sara Renney. I should have asked you, I should have confirmed that that's how you pronounce your last name.
You could not have been more perfect.
There you go. Today we welcome Sara Renney, who is the Communications Manager at Carver County. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being here. First of all, let's just start off with you telling us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up at this role at Carver County.
Yeah, so I've been in the communications world since 2000. I accidentally stumbled into the communications profession. Halfway through my college career, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And a college roommate said, you really love talking to people and getting into the brains of people. And I was obsessed with popular culture and she just thought it'd be a good fit, and she was right. So I quickly figured out that it was something that I enjoyed very much and was good at and enjoyed it very much. And so started out my career after college in the corporate retail space, specifically with Best Buy, and I was there for a handful of years. Learned a great deal about the promotional advertising piece while there, and then was a stay-at-home mom for about a decade.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, it was definitely the hardest job I've ever had, and by far the most rewarding. But it also really helped me when I moved back into the professional space, helped me have sort of a different focus and a different enthusiasm for what I do. I moved then into a communications position, part-time communications coordinator with a large church outside of the metro, and grew that into a director of communications position with a team of phenomenal communicators. And then in July of 2021, was hired by Carver County Public Works for a brand new communications position, one of two within the county, to oversee all things public works. So I support program delivery, parks, and operations, which keeps me very busy. There's a lot of exciting things that are always happening within public works for the county, within all public works divisions, for sure.
Yeah.
So
your focus is on public works then?
Yes.
That's your primary role there?
Does that qualify me as a nerd?
Yeah, it's getting there. It's getting there. Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think it's great that Carver County has got, the foresight to have a dedicated communications person within the department.
Yeah, I agree. And from what I've learned, of course, I wasn't part of the creation of my role, but what I've learned is that prior to me, there was one person doing all communications for the county, and it was just entirely, there wasn't enough bandwidth for all that there is to communicate properly. And of course, we're a large county, and I hear up until recent, the fastest growing county in the state. I think Wright County has recently taken over that title, but so there's a lot going on, and most certainly within public works alone. So yes, I agree with you. I think it says a lot about the county that it was recognized the need for my position back in 2021. Yeah.
So how has it been working for a government agency? I mean, it's kind of interesting because you came from a church, which is almost like I don't want to say like a government agency of its own, but it's there's some similar structures and such. But how does it feel working for the government?
I agree with you. I think there are a lot of parallels. it feels very much like being at the church was very similar to being part of the public sector. So I agree with you in that regard. There are so many elements to working for the public sector that is a huge motivation for what I do every day. I'm going back to what I said about how I even fell into my communications career in the first place, is that I like people, and I like diving into their minds. I like learning how people work, and communications is really the biggest piece of that. And so working for government enables me every day to feel like I'm very much making an impact, and impacting people's lives in a positive way. Of course, there's a negative connotation that comes sometimes with working for government. But now being on this side of it, and I am relatively new to government. It's only been just about 3 years. Right. So I see that, and I understand that side of things, but I also see and understand that the majority of people, like within probably any organization, working for the government, working for Carver County, it's very much, by and large, a group of people who very much are passionate about what they do and want to work as hard as they can and have challenges like anyone else does in any other role or in any other organization.
Yeah. No, well said. Well said. I think that is so true for, there's always the exceptions to the rule. There are some people that I think are probably feel trapped in the industry and maybe just don't care. They're just there to do what they have to do and get by. But I think the vast majority of people that I've had the privilege of working with do have some sort of passion, some level of passion for the job. And they like the maintenance workers, they care about the work that they do, that it's done right and it's done well. Absolutely. And they take pride in that, So yeah, it's good to see that. And it's, I do think we all know there's some bad stereotypes about government workers out there. And I can say in my experience that they're, certainly not true.
Yeah.
So, what is like a typical day for you then at this role at Carver County?
It depends on the day. It depends on the time of the year. Really, like I mentioned, I support program delivery, parks, and operations. And obviously, with our road construction projects, we are currently now, in May, obviously, in the very beginning of the construction phases for this year's project. So that's going to look very different, for example, from November of this year, when our construction projects for this calendar year have all come to a close. At which point then, kind of from November, December to April, May, it's all about the planning and the prep and creating communications calendars and communicating internally with project managers to gather information so I can put together communication strategy around each different project. Each different project has a different scale and scope to it and has different interests from the public. And so my goal, my responsibility is to try my best to tap into the minds of our residents to understand what they need from us and what they want from us. So now I'm executing those plans that I've put into place. Now it's, checking in regularly with internal stakeholders to see where we're at with projects, myself being part of meetings to hear updates on our projects, and just really then executing the plans that I've put into place and getting that information out to the public. I had a colleague say to me earlier this week, a colleague on the operations team, actually, he asked, "We have this happening this week. What's the quickest way to get the information out to our residents. And I kind of chuckled and I said, well, that's the $1 million question, right? And that's kind of what we try to do every day as communicators, try to figure out how to best get the information out to a huge number of residents spanning many different demographics, and to do it in a way that meets everyone's needs as quickly and as accurately as possible. And so sometimes for me, it's often Facebook. Yeah. But if you ask my 18-year-old daughter, she'd say, I go on Facebook maybe once a week. Yeah. And she gets her information from Instagram stories. And so it's just really tapping into all the different communication channels available to our residents. And that doesn't always have a one-size-fits-all answer.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, because we did have and for those listening, if you haven't heard the podcast episode from last year, from season 1 with Kevin Wright from Chaska, I encourage you to go back and listen to that. But, we had a good conversation with him, and he had worked with a group called the Local Road Research Report to put together like this guide on public communications or something.
Yep,
using
I'm
social
familiar
media.
with it. Yep.
And so, we kind of asked him about, what he thought was effective and this, that, and the other. So I'll ask you again a year later, because maybe the answers are changing a little bit. They might be shifting. You mentioned Facebook, you mentioned Instagram. Those are the primary ones, and what kind of demographics you're reaching, and how many of those people actually see it, do you think? Because like with Instagram in particular, I've tried to learn more of it, but it look at like the reels or the feed or whatever, and there's no guarantee that somebody's going to see your post.
Correct.
Even if they're following you, that they're actually going to, they might stop scrolling before they get to yours. So yeah, just talk about that. Like what tips or tricks you use and what other platforms you might use.
Well, I'm by no means the expert. Yeah. I think one of my favorite quotes is from a guy actually in the church communications world by the name of Brady Shearer. He always points out that we're currently living in the greatest communications shift of the last 500 years.
Wow.
And that's huge. And so as communicators, it's our responsibility to stay on top of the trends and to continue to follow what that looks like, so that, because our audiences are also trying to navigate the greatest communications shift of 500 years. So they're trying to learn it at the same time. And so it's our job and responsibility to stay 2 steps ahead of them so that we know how to best support their needs. Today, again, the answer to your question, I feel just really goes back to what is the topic? Who's our audience? And what is our purpose behind this communication? Last night, for example, speaking of City of Chaska, myself and one of our communications consultants was at the Downtown Taste of Chaska event. And we were there specifically to promote the upcoming Highway 4110 project, which will be a huge asset to the county and to the city of Chaska once complete. But of course, as we all know, with any road construction project, it'll be a lot to navigate in the meantime. But we chose that particular event because we knew that there were a lot of residents that were planning to be there that drive that intersection daily, that care, that have kids at the middle schools, that work out at the Chaska Community Center regularly, that live in the neighborhoods, etc. And so for that project, we chose to be part of this huge community event. We have, for different projects, whether it's parks operations or program delivery, we have What many government agencies use is Gov Delivery, which is basically a mass email source.
Yep.
And right now, a huge, really the primary social media platform that we're using within Public Works, because it fits the majority of our demographic, is Facebook.
Yeah.
For parks, we utilize Instagram quite a bit. But another interesting thing too is that kind of one of the number one rules in social media is that it's really important to master one social media platform before you move on to another. And the importance of a social media coordinator, a dedicated social media person, is huge. We don't have that right now at the county. And so when you are able to find resources to tap into all that, it absolutely opens up the world to you. And so we just simply right now don't have the means to be, or the resources, the people, the staffing to be able to move, to properly navigate all of the platforms the way I'd like to be.
Okay.
But that's changing. And again, back to what you said, the county very much recognizes the need for it. And so more positions are coming. And with social media too, every day is different. You can post something that you have absolutely no idea that's going to be a hit, and it's a huge hit, and it's like, what just happened? Yeah. And then things you're really proud of and excited to share, it gets mediocre engagement. Right. So there really is a supernatural element to social media as well, that we all kind of get, us as communicators sort of get that natural high off of when we hit it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I haven't had anything go viral yet, so I wouldn't know what that feels like.
Same, but I'll let you know. We'll have a big party.
Are you guys using more video now?
It's so funny you say that. We do not have a videography team within the county, but we have a lot of support for video. So what we have done is we hire out communications consultants, HDR being our primary one for our road construction projects, who does have videography resources. And so, and then like you and I chatted about right before we began, Bolton and Mink created a tremendous video tool for us earlier this year in support of our Highway 5 project funding. Video has this amazing way of capturing storytelling elements that resonate with people, that helps draw people in, that shows emotion, that tells the story that words and an image alone just simply cannot. Right now, I'm beginning the process of putting together a promotional video piece for our Parks Department. We have a brand new building out at Lake Waconia Regional Park, Paradise Commons, that was just complete earlier this year. And we're going to be putting together a promotional video for that, very much inspired by what the videography team from Bolton and Mink did for the Highway 5 funding project, because it really just drives home the storytelling aspect that is so hard to capture in other ways. Yeah.
I find it interesting that, both Instagram and now with TikTok, and I think TikTok is kind of driving all of this video stuff.
I agree.
Like Instagram is trying to play catch up now on using the stories and the reels and stuff like that with video more. But you're right. It's amazing how different it is in absorbing that content, in a video format versus, just a little blurb. And particularly like, with Instagram or with Twitter, you have the character limitations anyway. And
correct, yeah.
TikTok, I don't know, the video length limits seem fluid. It's dynamic somehow, and I don't know enough about it to know when you get to post longer videos. But
right.
They still have some limits, but it just seems like you can get more of your message across. Like you said, I think there's that emotional component to it, and then you just get the inflection, the voice, and things like that. And those are things you can't get out of text.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the greatest marketing tools at our disposal as communicators is storytelling.
Yeah.
And what better way to do it than via video?
Right.
It just drives the story home so profoundly.
Yeah. So you touched on the Trunk Highway 5 project, so let's maybe talk a little bit about that, particularly since Bolton Mank did the video.
Right.
I'm kind of compelled to talk about it. But yeah, and I think this is what kind of kicked off this idea to bring you in and talk to you about it. Maybe just give a little background about the project and why you guys did this video and how that helped.
Yeah, let's see. So just to give a little background personally, I personally moved out to the city of Victoria back in 2003. And just to give you some perspective back then, if I'm not mistaken, the population of Victoria, which of course is right off of Highway 5, for those who aren't super familiar, was around 4,000. And I think today the last population count was close to 11,000, if I'm not mistaken. Wow. Bottom line, that entire portion of Carver County is growing exponentially. Back then in 2003, I remember feeling frustrated with the bottleneck that happened every day on my commute to and from work on Highway 5 at County Road 41, all the way through downtown Victoria. I remember being frustrated back in 2003. It's 2024.
Yeah.
And nothing has changed, except for the fact that we are working behind the scenes diligently. An army of people are working behind the scenes diligently to ensure that these projects happen. What we lovingly refer to as the Arboretum Area Transportation Project, which is a mouthful, which I will sum up as AATP, encompasses a number of smaller projects, but I say small with air quotes because nothing about this is small.
Yeah.
But the main upcoming ones right now that we are heavily working toward accomplishing would be the 82nd Street project, which is behind the Arboretum.
Okay.
Currently a gravel road. And that, I was just looking over my notes before I came, if I'm not mistaken, utility work will begin for that project end of 2024 construction season, and the bulk of the construction will be 25. The Highway 5 improvements project, which is being primarily led by City of Chanhassen, that is slated right now for end of 25 and completion anticipated sometime in 27. And then really the third big one right now would be the downtown Victoria Highway 5 West project. And that too is slated, I believe, for end of 25. But I'll give you the most common road construction term I believe out there is it's all weather and schedule dependent.
Yeah. That's the asterisk.
That's the asterisk for absolutely everything. Yeah. But the 82nd Street project is fully funded, and thanks to the help of the Bolton and Mank video that we put together for the Highway 5 funding ask, we back in early March learned that we're now just into the teens for the funding gap for the Highway 5 improvement project. So it's happening.
Yeah.
It's coming. And, just kind of coming full circle in that conversation, one of the biggest realizations for me when I moved into this role was how it really does take an army of people crossing all their T's, dotting all the I's, working with countless different project partners to ensure that any road construction project happens, never mind one of this magnitude.
Right.
Gosh, I feel like the last number I heard was when it's all said and done right now, the AATP will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 130 million. And it's going to take years to complete.
Yeah.
And so, again, what this is doing is setting up the next generation for improved safety in a variety of different ways. And so it's our job to ensure that we do this for the next generation. And that's ultimately, at the end of the day, the driving force and motivation for what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey everyone, I just want to take a quick moment to thank our sponsor, Bolton & Mink, who is producing and editing our podcasts.
At Bolton & Mink, we believe all people should live in a safe, sustainable, and beautiful community. We promise every client 2 things. We'll work hard for you, and we'll do a good job. We take a personal interest in the work being done around us. And at the end of the day, we're real people offering real solutions.
So talking about Highway 5 and we'll post a link to the video that was put together by Bolton & Mink, if I haven't said that already. But it's a nice video, and I can see where it could be very helpful. Again, we can send cut sheets to our legislators and our congressmen and senators and such. We can send these little cut sheets and pieces of paper that talk about the project, but you put it into video and it's showing the roads and showing the backups, and you get the stakeholders talking. It just adds a whole new element to it. So it would be interesting to, and I don't know if you could ever get a straight answer out of anybody on this, but it'd be really interesting to try to figure out how influential that video really was, ultimately in the final decision. But
agreed.
But the fact of the matter is, and this is the same with any project that goes on, and you're looking for state or federal funding for it, you're competing with other projects across the state or across the country, and you got to do something to separate yourself out in that competition. So I think this is a really good idea and very interesting. And I'll let the listeners judge for themselves after watching the video. But it'll be interesting to see how much more agencies start doing things like this. To try to get that. With Highway 5, and I don't know how much involved you've been on this, but how have you worked to keep the public informed about this? I guess partly, probably mostly through that AATP, the Arboretum Transportation Plan that you talked about, but.
Yeah, well, the AATP dates back before my time. There was a huge study done prior to my time with the county, so I can't speak to that. However, I do know for a fact public engagement has been ongoing for years regarding all of this. Right now, what's happening is we have somebody heading up all communications for AATP and overseeing each individual communications group, if you will, that fall into each individual project.
Okay.
Regular meetings to connect on updated information from the project teams, the project managers, the design teams, the communities, the city engineers, all necessary people that are driving these projects. We're meeting with regularly to get updated information. We've had multiple public meetings. We have more to come, specifically for 82nd Street and the Highway 5 improvements project later this summer. Not at the same time, they're going to be held separately, but that's just because they're on a different pace at this point, which is right and good because we don't want them happening at the exact same time. And side note, specific to public meetings, last fall, we had a public meeting for Highway 5, 82nd Street, and I believe Highway 5 downtown West, downtown Victoria Highway 5 West was there. But it was everyone said it was the most heavily attended public meeting that they had ever seen. It was at the Arboretum. There was literally a line out the door. We had, I want to say close to 300 people in attendance for a public meeting.
Yeah.
This is a very, people are very interested in this project. And now I just forgot your original question. I got off on a tangent.
That's okay.
Apologies.
I was just asking about public engagement.
Yeah. Public engagement.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. So public meetings, and we have regular elected official and public emails that are going out regularly on the project websites, which can be found on Carver County's website. People can sign up for these email updates that are happening now, either monthly or bi-monthly, and it will always outline what's coming and how more information can be found. The communications teams are actively engaging with business partners and residents, social media, project informational handouts, community events. I mean, the goal is to be able to share as much information as possible because, like I said, a lot of people are very interested in this project, and understandably, it's going to impact a lot of people's lives, a lot of schedules, a lot of daily routines, businesses. It's a sensitive subject as well. So while we're all mostly excited that it's happening, we also want to ensure that it's done properly with respect to all necessary individuals involved.
Yeah. There's no way of avoiding impact to, the people who live around the corridor, or even more so the businesses around the corridor. There's no way to avoid that, but trying to minimize that as much as possible.
Yeah, and getting the information out as much as possible to your question. I mean, that at the end of the day is the goal, because knowledge is power, and our goal is to be always forthcoming with the information that we have, and then going back to the start of the conversation, figuring out the best way to do that for each individual project.
Yeah. Have you guys done anything with like public virtual meetings?
Yeah, but really more so during COVID and immediately following. In the last, for sure year, close to 2, I personally have tried to move away from that. I feel like providing an opportunity for residents, property owners, constituents who are interested in different projects to come in and ask questions personally has been proven to be very, very beneficial. But phone calls, emails, things like that do the trick too. But I've just found it to be a better use of everybody's time having it in person, of course, when safety measures are in place. And
when you have these meetings, are they more like an open house type of format, or is there like a formal presentation?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, it really just depends. Like the Highway 4110 project that I mentioned a year ago, March of 23, we had our first public meeting for that project, and there were 2 presentations within the public meeting, because it warranted them, given the stage that it was at, that where we were at in the design process. But now, just this past April, we had our second public meeting, and it was just an open house style where people could come in and see information boards, grab handouts, talk to the designers, talk to the project management team, see layouts. So yeah, it just really depends. And not every project has an open house either. Right. So yeah,
I always struggle between the different formats. The one thing I don't like about the public presentation, and sometimes I've tried to do both. Like, okay, we're going to start with a presentation that everybody sees, and then we're going to move to an open house type of format. Well, it never leaves that meeting part, because they start asking you questions from the audience, and then you're stuck there. And then like the questions build off of each other, and if there's opposition, they start feeding off of each other, and it just I don't like that. I much prefer talking to the participants one-on-one, or maybe even a small group. it's too hard to lose control of it in that big audience format. So still don't know what the perfect format is, but I definitely like the open house format better.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to have those personal conversations too. Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So I want to ask you a couple other just general questions about communications, but
sure.
What's the worst, and I don't know how much you get involved in actually responding to, a response to a Instagram post or a Facebook post, something, but like, what's the worst that you're willing to share anyway? Post or response that you had to respond to?
Well, I think that's sort of a tricky question because it's not always right to respond to quote unquote the worst.
Yep. Yeah.
But I'll share this is just probably government humor.
Yeah.
Now that I've been doing this for a few years, but I think it was like 6 months ago, or I can't even remember what federal holiday it was. And like we usually do on social media, I posted that our government, county offices, public offices were going to be closed for the federal holiday. And somebody posted something to the effect of course they are. One more day that we're paying for our employees to have a day, something like that.
Yeah.
And I did not respond to it. But I thought it was kind of funny because I felt like this very benign post that was just put out to be forthcoming and informative. And, even that garnered criticism. So, but yeah, I do think that it takes training and knowledge to know what needs response and what doesn't. I was just recently, last month actually, at a phenomenal conference. It's called GSM Con, Government Social Media Conference. And it was incredibly informative in all different areas, really not just specific to social media, but spoke to First Amendment rights specifically around social media. And quite honestly, the Supreme Court has really tapped in very recent years into this really brand new thing that is social media.
Yeah.
And how laws should be formed around it. And as government employees, we have to take social media very seriously and our jobs with social media very seriously because it is a First Amendment right.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of responsibility there. So
yeah, I would love to do maybe not a Public Works Nerds podcast, we'll call it something else, but I'd love to participate in a podcast just breaking down the First Amendment right.
Yes.
What does that really mean? And what does that really entitle you to? And what doesn't it entitle you to?
Exactly.
I think a lot of people think that it's their First Amendment right to be able to say whatever the heck is on their mind to whomever the heck they want to.
Yeah.
Whether it's appropriate or not. And then sometimes in some very hostile cases. But in any event, that's a separate topic.
Is. And it's a very interesting and exciting one professionally. But just side note, I have 2 teenagers and I always tell them when you're on social media, only say on social media what you would say if that person was standing right in front of your face. It's just sort of a good rule of thumb. But back to
or only say what you would put up on a billboard.
Oh, that too. Absolutely. With your name under it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it just takes a few retweets for the avalanche to start following and that thing to go viral.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of tweets, that's a whole nother topic, Twitter and X and sort of
I still use that as like my primary, like
a lot of people do.
Yeah. I have some very focused areas that I depend on. X, I still call Twitter, but that I depend on X to feed me, and a lot of that's related to baseball. My son plays baseball in college, and following that and a lot of his old teammates and this, that, and the other through X. And I still try to get some of my news through X, but it's become so jaded and one-sided. It's hard to really rely on it anymore. And
that's really what people are saying.
Right.
How about Threads?
I opened an account on Threads when that whole thing started, and I think I opened up a Threads account for the podcast, but I don't think I've used it at all. And I just haven't jumped on there. It just feels different. I must be getting old, because I don't like change. I'm an old curmudgeon. Get off my grass.
That's what they say. It happens, I guess.
But I just haven't jumped over. Every once in a while I get a notification. I'll go over there and see what's going on. But how about you?
Same personally. Yeah. And for the county, same. I have not jumped into that realm yet, simply because I haven't had the bandwidth to do it. I think I'll just say I'm interested to see where it goes.
Yeah.
Very interested to see where it goes. It's in its infancy for sure, much like AI.
Yeah.
And I think,
the interesting thing about Threads is, we've talked about Facebook and Instagram, which are both Facebook products.
Meta.
And now Threads is a Meta product. So I'm a little worried about that. I mean, I'm not the kind of person who subscribes to a lot of conspiracy theories or anything like that, or the sky is falling or whatever. But, it's a little weird if the top 3 social media platforms that we rely on are all owned by one company. I think that gets a little dicey.
It does. So, I agree. Yeah. But to argue that, I would say TikTok is probably...
Yeah. There's obviously that's been in the news a lot. Has the city talked about opening or the county? I'm sorry. Has the county talked about opening a TikTok account?
We have not opened a TikTok account. I would say that it's for the same reason that I just cited, that I just don't have the bandwidth to properly navigate. But also TikTok is a sensitive, a bit of a sensitive platform. Yeah. But I know that there are multiple government agencies using it in spectacular kinds of ways. So, I think different things work for different agencies, for sure.
Yeah. The fact of the matter is the kids that are using TikTok now, at some point are going to be the adults that are kind of the focus group,
right?
Or our target audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so at some point we're going to have to find something that aligns better with that platform. And I think Instagram's close.
Yeah.
But it's, they're trying to be a little bit more like TikTok, I think. But
Instagram stories.
Yeah. But it'll be interesting, in 5 years, where are we? Because just think where we were 5 years ago, or 10.
Oh my goodness,
even more so. But so it'll be really interesting to see how that's all evolves in there.
And how it all evolves too with AI.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, that's just a whole nother frontier that's going to impact everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think I'll leave you with, we'll end, or get close to the end anyway, on this question of what have you learned about public works that has shocked or surprised you that you didn't know going in?
I guess to that answer, I'll plug our operations team a little bit. I've talked about how hard, our road construction teams are, our parks, with the new building that we just put out and all the other programming that Parks has available throughout the year, and especially right now. But really operations, I've been blown away by the lack of pomp and circumstance, the celebration, what have you, that our operations team, and I'm sure it's not specific to Carver County,
right.
But it's a group of people that work around the clock, literally, and around the calendar. And they're the people that enable our emergency personnel to get out onto roads during a blizzard, or that allow us to get our kids to and from school on icy roads, or right now, our operations team is working on maintenance projects throughout the summer, crack filling, seal coating. These are things that don't get the visibility that the AATP gets, or that Highway 4110 or Highway 212 or whatever, because we just expect it to be done.
Right.
But these are incredibly hardworking individuals that, guilty as charged, I never realized how hard these people work. And now when I'm driving my youngest daughter to school, in the winter, and we see a snowplow, I say always, just kind of give them a wave and a nod as a thank you. These people are getting call outs at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning while the rest of us sleep. They're out ensuring that we have roadways that are safe to drive ourselves and our families on, or they're out right now in the excruciating heat and sun, making sure that our roads are properly cared for the next however many years. So I think, that's been my biggest surprise. I did not realize how hard that team works. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever, my responsibilities often at this time of year are more focused on the road construction project, the high profile projects. So they don't get the visibility that they deserve, but they are a group of hardworking people.
Yeah, no, well said. We have a recurring quote that we use on the podcast, and I have to credit Mark Ray every time I say it. But we make normal happen. That's public works.
I love that.
Yeah, and it really is, and it's interesting because I don't want to talk. I would never talk down about our public safety people, the police and fire, because they do some amazing things. Absolutely. A lot of amazing things. They're running towards something when everybody else is running away from it.
Yep.
But they have time, or they make time. They go out around and they're doing little public awareness things in the community for themselves. They're showing up at different events and things like that. And the public works people and the parks people are working at those events,
Absolutely.
And so it's just a little different because then the public sees them differently. And it's not necessarily fair. But I will say that most public works people want it that way.
Yeah.
I mean, the vast majority of public works people are modest, and they don't need the accolade. They enjoy a pat on the back and that, and it's up to the agencies to make sure that there is some appreciation, whether it's a little barbecue type of thing or something for them. But the vast majority of them are, well, they're fine with what it is. I'm out there plowing the road and I go home and I sleep and I got my job done. I don't need to be on a poster anywhere.
It's true. It's true. And I think if I tried to put them on posters, they would not like that.
Right. But they do deserve quite the kudos for all of the work that they do. So
couldn't agree more.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that.
Yep.
Well, hey, this has been great. Anything else you want to say, or?
Just probably if anybody's interested in current or upcoming Carver County road construction projects, that all that information can be found on our Carver County Public Works website, including signing up for regular project updates, and that also includes parks. All of our summer programming is well underway. Sign up. Paradise Commons, the brand new building out at Lake Waconia Regional Park, is available for rental space. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful building. All that information can also be found on our Carver County Parks page. And actually June 21st, we're having a first ever beach bash out at Lake Waconia Regional Park with the city of Waconia and their chamber, to celebrate that building, but to celebrate summer and to celebrate our parks facilities and the beautiful lake, that whole area. So
cool.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening today. And one last thing before you go, if you've enjoyed this episode and the podcast in general, I say it every episode, we ask that you help us spread the word, particularly on LinkedIn. If you can comment on one of the Public Works Nerds posts, or comment on our YouTube page. But most importantly, tell your colleagues about the podcast. Thanks, everybody. Nerds out.